Biden seeks to imprison Trump for 100 years. It's time to impeach Joe Biden right now. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today, we're going to be talking about the unfortunate indictment of former President Donald Trump by the U.S. Justice Department Special Counsel Jack Smith. He actually just spoke at the microphone a few moments ago. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to hear from him directly about why he's bringing charges against former President Donald Trump and what his explanation to the American people for such an unprecedented abuse of power. Donald Trump is the front runner for the Republican nomination in 2024. He's leading all of the polls against his closest rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He's been leading Joe Biden in recent polls as well when you look at the head-to-head matchups. And so what you have here is the president is the executive branch. There is a unitary executive, the attorney general, he answers to the president. The special counsel answers to the attorney general. But basically, Merrick Garland has delegated his power to prosecute Trump in this case to Jack Smith, the special counsel. But ultimately speaking, the executive branch is just one person. It's the president of the United States. And so the executive branch is prosecuting Joe Biden's top political opponent in 2024, supposedly for mishandling classified documents. That Trump actually says that he declassified. So I think that that's very, kind of problematic on its face when Trump's automatically saying, hey, wait a second, I took these documents with me, but I declassified them. There's actually a memorandum of declassification from former President Trump that he did the day before he left office. And we're going to go through some of that as well so that we can get some specs on the facts of this case and maybe some things to kind of look out for going forward. But first, I wanted you to hear from Special Counsel Jack Smith.
Good afternoon. Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with felony violations of our national security laws, as well as participating in a conspiracy to obstruct justice. This indictment was voted by a grand jury of citizens in the Southern District of Florida, and I invite everyone to read it in full to understand the scope and the gravity of the crimes charged. The men and women of the United States intelligence community and our armed forces dedicate their lives to protecting our nation and its people. Our laws that protect national defense information are critical to the safety and security of the United States, and they must be enforced. Violations of those laws put our country at risk. Adherence to the rule of law is a bedrock principle of the Department of Justice, and our nation's commitment to the rule of law sets an example for the world. We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone. Applying those laws, collecting facts, that's what determines the outcome of an investigation. Nothing more and nothing less. The prosecutors in my office are among the most talented and experienced in the Department of Justice. They have investigated this case hewing to the highest ethical standards, and they will continue to do so as this case proceeds. It's very important for me to note that the defendants in this case must be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. To that end, my office will seek a speedy trial in this matter, consistent with the public interest and the rights of the accused. We very much look forward to presenting our case to a jury of citizens in the Southern District of Florida. In conclusion, I would like to thank the dedicated public servants of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, with whom my office is conducting this investigation and who work tirelessly every day upholding the rule of law in our country. I'm deeply proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. Thank you very much.
Why Florida, sir? Why did you decide?
And so that was the statement from Jack Smith. Special counsel at the Justice Department bringing an indictment of former President Donald Trump. We actually have the indictment right here, United States of America v. Donald J. Trump. And it goes on for about 49 pages. And I won't go into all the details of the indictment itself at this moment. I wanted to go to the penalty sheet so you can see what type of jail time former President Trump is looking at with relates to this case and what that could mean for 2024, but also what this means for the country. This has never, ever happened before. You've never had a president and an attorney general going to imprison the rival in the election that's upcoming. And then, and try to sell it to the American people. There's Jack Smith. He's going to put a smiley face on this and say that he's proud to stand with the FBI and law enforcement, that this is some sort of pro law enforcement action. This is a political witch hunt that began against Donald Trump almost the moment he began running for president. You had the Russiagate hoax that was foisted upon the American people by Trump's rival in the 2016 election, Hillary Clinton, and the DNC and the Perkins Coie law firm. They wanted you to believe, the American people, that Donald Trump was some sort of Russian agent, that he had conspired and his campaign with Moscow to hack the DNC and to put their emails onto WikiLeaks. And then you get to the Mueller report and you get to the Durham report and you find out that wasn't even true. There was no conspiracy between Trump and Russia to hack the DNC and to put emails onto WikiLeaks. It looked bad for Clinton. It looked bad for the DNC, but just because something politically bad happened to Hillary Clinton and the DNC didn't mean that we needed to drag our country onto, frankly, the verge of World War III with Russia, because we haven't had good relations with them since 2014. When the Civil War began there, Joe Biden was vice president at the time. Barack Obama had delegated responsibility for Ukraine over to then Vice President Joe Biden. And Biden, in his biography, was actually taking credit for the fact that he had helped to push Viktor Yanukovych, the elected Ukrainian leader, president, out of power in 2014. And so this is that's when the Civil War began. That's when Russia annexed Crimea. And then you had kind of for 8 years, the Civil War going until finally Russia invaded Ukraine. And in an act of aggression. And we've been escalating ever since. Ukraine's been asking to become a part of NATO, even while there's an active invasion of their country. Obviously, that would probably mean World War III. And I think Donald Trump ran against that. And because he ran against that, they brought Russiagate upon the American people and against him, and tried to take him out and try to make sure that he could not implement whatever policies he had, whatever means of averting a international crisis that we find ourselves in today, that he would never, ever have the opportunity to do that. And furthermore, that he would never, ever have access to the Department of Justice, because Jeff Sessions was recused almost immediately because of the Russiagate investigation. This top secret investigation, the spying on the Trump campaign, was carried over from the Trump campaign. He won the election into the Trump transition, and then they carried it over into his administration. Even after he was sworn into office, they lied about it in front of Congress. And then when Trump fires James Comey, the FBI director, for doing this and for lying to the American people about this, he gets a special counsel on him. And then Robert Mueller is going to look at some sort of obstruction thing, but then no charges are brought. There was no conspiracy with Russia. But for all his trouble, Trump is now looking at 100 years in prison. We have here willful retention of national defense information, maximum term 10 years. Conspiracy to obstruct justice, maximum term 20 years. Withholding a document or record, maximum term of imprisonment 20 years. Corruptly concealing a document or record, maximum term of imprisonment 20 years. Concealing a document in a federal investigation, maximum term of imprisonment 20 years. Scheme to conceal, maximum term of imprisonment 5 years. False statements and representations, maximum term of imprisonment 5 years. What else we got here? And that's the other defendant, Waltine Nauta. But there you go. Trump's facing more than 100 years in prison. with this indictment. Again, this is unprecedented. No former president has ever been indicted under these grounds. No candidate for president has ever been indicted on these grounds. And that's not like, although to be fair, this is not the first time we've had classified documents cases being brought against would-be presidents. DOJ has had criminal and counterintelligence investigations of the past 4 would-be presidents: David Petraeus, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden as well, who also has a special counsel due to his mishandling of classified documents. If you look at this, David Petraeus in 2011, The Guardian ran a headline about former CIA director and retired General David Petraeus in profile, the man who could be president, but it was not to be. It speculated he might run for president in 2016. A year later, after the terrorist attacks at U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, it was revealed that Petraeus had an extramarital affair with his biographer beginning in 2011, who exchanged messages in a draft folder using Petraeus' secret secure email account. When discovered, Petraeus resigned as CIA director in November of 2012 and later pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge of mishandling classified information. So here you had David Petraeus. A lot of people thought after Biden he would run for president. But it never ended up happening. Now, you look at Hillary Clinton as well. She had her own classified documents kind of case by the Justice Department in 2015 and 2016. It was revealed during the Benghazi investigation that she had a private email server that she was keeping classified documents on. Basically, she just wanted to get all these national security emails on her smartphone because she was lazy and didn't want to sit down at a secure computer or something like that. In any event, she was never prosecuted by the Justice Department in 2016. You will all remember that because, frankly, it was kind of unthinkable that she would be. When you think about it, she was going to be the nominee for the Democratic Party in 2016. She was going to stand for election later that year. So it would be kind of weird and strange in the United States of America to have a presidential candidate being, arrested and brought up on charges. So she was never charged. But here you have Donald Trump, maybe a similar case. He has the indictment brought against him by his political opponent, by the man he lost to in 2020, Joe Biden and Merrick Garland. And I got to tell you, I want you guys to, there's the link in the chat and it's in the description as well. Urge House to impeach Joe Biden right now. And this is the statement here. Joe Biden is the most corrupt, compromised president in U.S. history. But the Trump indictment is the ultimate abuse of power. The House needs to impeach Biden now, and the Senate needs to begin the trial. No excuses, no delays. All you have to do is fill out this form. It'll go to your member of the House. It'll also go to your 2 senators. I believe that Speaker McCarthy and House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, they need to begin this process immediately. We've never had a president attempting to imprison his rival in the election that's upcoming ever before in American history. This has never, ever happened before. This is quite unprecedented. And I don't think it's going to fly with the American people in the end. When you look at what the state of the race was, it's like, oh, why is Biden doing this? Why would he want Trump to be prosecuted? I mean, you already have New York City District Attorney's Office going at Trump. There's the so-called hush money case to do with Stormy Daniels, and it hasn't hurt Trump at all nationally in the polls. In fact, the recent set of polls from realclearpolitics.com, this is a national average, had Trump leading Joe Biden 45.5% to 43.7%. We're not even up to New Hampshire and Iowa and South Carolina yet, but Trump's already ahead in the polls against Joe Biden. There was a Harris poll done recently that had him up by 7 points. Marquette had him up by 5 points. ABC News, Washington Post had him up by 6 points. There's a few others, YouGov, Quinnipiac, Yahoo News, that show Biden up by a hair. But on average, Trump's been leading polls recently, and he's also been leading the Republican Republican nomination in 2024 pretty easily. As you might expect, a former president's got a lot of name credibility, who's got more experience than someone who's already served as president. So Ron DeSantis, Florida governor, he's the closest rival, but he's trailing by about 31 points, according to the latest average. Trump gets about 53% of Republican voters and Republican leaning voters who can vote in these open primaries. And Ron DeSantis, he gets about 22%. And so Trump's been leading the polls. That makes him kind of the presumptive nominee, or at least the front runner. I mean, we haven't, not a single ballot's been cast. There's still debates in the GOP primary that you would expect to happen going forward. But I don't think that the indictment of Trump in New York City, it didn't hurt him at all. The Russiagate conspiracy, that whole hoax that was brought upon the American people by Hillary Clinton and the DNC and the Justice Department, it didn't hurt Trump at all, really. Now, they tried to impeach him in 2019 to do with having the phone call with Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, where Trump was inquiring about Joe Biden's dealings inside of that country. Now, it turns out that apparently there's an allegation by an FBI agent that there could have been a $5 million bribe from a Ukrainian businessman to Joe Biden. And this has been kept under lock and key. We weren't allowed to find out about this, but now we know what Trump was asking Zelensky about. I think there was something to do with that. But none of this is hurting Trump, I think, in the polls. And so this is designed to kind of knock Trump off the board and somehow drive him out of the race. And I don't think that's going to work, because I don't think he'll be cowed. I think that Trump is standing tall. There was a statement from him. I think this is on June 7th. So he's anticipating that the indictment is on its way. He says, wow, this is turning out to be the greatest, most vicious instance of election interference in the history of our country. Remember, I'm leading Ron DeSantis big in the polls, but more importantly, I'm leading Biden by a lot. Also, and perhaps most importantly, they are launching all of the many fake investigations against me right smack in the middle of my campaign, something which is unheard of and not supposed to happen. DOJ, FBI, New York AG, New York DA, Atlanta DA, fascists, all. And I got to tell you, he's not wrong. This is rather unprecedented. And it didn't happen to Hillary Clinton in 2016. Here you see Trump shaking Hillary's hand at the debates. And so I wrote a piece about this today, noting that, there's no consensus for locking up political opponents. As a matter of fact, partisans would like to lock up their political opponents. So I'm sure partisan Republicans wanted to see Hillary Clinton go to jail in 2016. I'm sure partisan Democrats would like to see Donald Trump go to jail in 2023. But by and large, there's not a consensus for doing this, on a constitutional basis, the social contract, as it were, because once you get beyond partisans, the country is deeply divided over political prosecutions. So we'll go into my piece here a little bit here. David Petraeus had a classified documents case. So did Hillary Clinton. Now so does Donald Trump, who is being indicted by special counsel Jack Smith. And so does Joe Biden. He's got a special counsel, too, over his own mishandling alleged of classified documents. All would be and actual presidential candidates and presidents with varying degrees of popularity, but all were humbled or are being humbled by the prospect and fact of U.S. Justice Department investigations over their handling of classified documents during and after their times in office. And I'm just noting here that the past four would-be presidents, David Petraeus, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden, all have Justice Department investigations or prosecutions against them to do with classified documents. And that does it look like they're trying to leverage people? Maybe. Let's get into that. Despite the publicness of these cases, they were not the result of a groundswell of public sentiment against these figures and candidates. Trump supporters in 2016, they popularized the "Lock Her Up" chant. In 2016 for keeping classified documents on her private email server. And you'll remember at the Republican National Convention, Trump's like, no, we're not going to, once they started chanting "Lock her up," you're like, no, we're going to defeat her in November. But rather these were, so it's not a public groundswell like, oh, lock her up, and then a mob comes and collects Hillary Clinton and then puts her in jail, or Donald Trump, as the case may be. Rather, these are the result of internal decisions made at the Justice Department to, one by one, in my opinion, show who's really boss in Washington, D.C. In fact, when it comes to prosecuting presidential candidates, hereafter I'll say political prosecutions, the American people remain deeply divided. In 2016, when the Justice Department opted not to bring charges against Hillary Clinton, there was a July 2016 ABC News Washington Post poll that showed that 56% of Americans disapproved of the decision not to charge Clinton on the email. So there was actually people who wanted to see Clinton prosecuted, and it was a slight majority at the time. Was it a consensus, though? Would we build our social contract? Would we exit the state of nature on this basis? Let's take a look. 56% of Americans disapproved the decision not to charge her. 35% supported the decision not to charge her. Broken down by party, this is the unsurprising part of it, and here's where the partisan element comes into it. In 2016, 9 out of 10 Republicans disagreed with not charging Clinton. They said, oh, she's clearly guilty. She's keeping classified documents on her server. You have to prosecute her. While 2/3 of Democrats, they agreed with the decision not to charge her. So when you break it down, the Democrats, by and large, didn't want to see Hillary Clinton prosecuted, but the Republicans, by and large, did want to see her prosecuted. So, if in a rational position, in a faction, no party is going to want to allow their own members to be prosecuted by other factions. So you wouldn't exit the state of nature with that other faction unless you could come to some sort of agreement, some sort of constitution that we're not going to do that sort of thing. We're not going to be a banana republic. We're not going to be the Roman Republic and bring up our political opponents on charges prior to elections in order to interfere with them and try to win. But you understand the partisan element of that the Republicans wanted to prosecute Clinton, the Democrats didn't. And then independents, they were kind of split. 6 out of 10 disagreed with the FBI decision not to charge. So you could say, oh, they were kind of leaning in favor of the Republicans, so Clinton should have been charged. Well, maybe not. This doesn't seem like much of a consensus to me if the Democrats are all saying Clinton's innocent and all the Republicans are saying Clinton's guilty. And then you'll see the roles get reversed today. If you look at polls on the most recent indictment of Trump in New York City, it says majority of Americans approve of Trump indictment. Why? That looks a lot like the result of the other poll that we just looked at. Majority wanted to see Clinton prosecuted. So a majority of Americans approve of Trump. And then when you break it down by party, Republicans are in opposition to the indictment. Democrats are in favor of it. And then independents are roughly split on the matter. What a coincidence. That seems to happen every single time this comes up. Now, so while there is some majority support, there was for prosecuting Clinton or Trump in today's case, it was by no means unanimous or near unanimous over her handling of classified documents. I expect the same thing will happen with Trump here. The public is divided. It was divided back then. It's going to be divided today, which, no surprise, it was in the middle of a presidential election. Hillary Clinton was the Democrat Party's nominee. What would have been strange and unprecedented would have been if she had been prosecuted. Again, this has never happened before, guys. So we're Jack Smith and Merrick Garland and Joe Biden. They're making history of turning America into a banana republic. What is it? June 8th, June 9th, the indictment gets handed out. June 9th. 2023, the day that will live in infamy. Fast forward to 2023, where former President Donald Trump is the Republican frontrunner for president in 2024 to square off against President Joe Biden. Trump is now indicted by the Justice Department over his own handling of documents that he says he declassified on his way out of office. And there was another poll done. We have a Harvard-Harris poll that was taken in September of 2022. And I wanted to kind of get a read, a few weeks after the raid, the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago and Palm Beach, Florida, to see how the public kind of felt about that, because I figure it's going to kind of mirror how the public ends up feeling about this case. 51% of voters in the Harvard Caps Harris polls taken September 2022 thought that the FBI raid was politically motivated, while 49% thought it was required by Justice Department protocols. Broken down, unsurprisingly, 77% of Republicans thought it was politically motivated, the FBI raid. 77% of Democrats thought it was not politically motivated. Independents were roughly divided, 53% saying the raid was politically motivated and 47% saying no. So in all of these cases, you might say, well, that's stupid. If there isn't public support, if you lack the consent of the governed for political prosecutions, maybe we shouldn't do them. Maybe that's why they have never happened before. Maybe that's why what's kind of been happening these past several election cycles where, would-be presidents are being investigated by the Justice Department and actual presidents, people who are in office. Maybe they're trying to leverage policy decisions. Maybe these are swords of Damocles that are held over Republican and Democratic presidents' heads. It's like, you better do what you're told or we're coming to get you. Maybe that's what's going on here. Assuming a similar breakdown will arise from the Justice Department's indictment of Trump, the former president's poll numbers have actually improved after New York City District Attorney Alvin Bragg indicted him over alleged hush money to adult actress Stormy Daniels, porn star. The country simply lacks any workable consensus around prosecuting and imprisoning prominent political figures. We just don't. That's not how we're built. We have a constitution. We have due process. We expect our political affairs will be settled by the American people in elections. That's what's upcoming right now. We are going to settle our political affairs by having another periodic, constitutionally prescribed election. It's going to be Joe Biden versus, if he's still running next year, but he says he's running. So I guess it's going to be Biden versus whoever the Republican nominee is going to be. Looks like it might be Trump now. You think Republicans are going to be like, oh no, Trump's indicted, we can't vote for him now. No, his numbers are going to probably go up now. Everyone's going to be like, Trump 2024, we have to support Trump. We can't let him do that. We need him to either drain the swamp, or we can't let the DOJ and Biden and Merrick Garland and Jack Smith do this to Trump. We're not going to throw him to the wolves. That's what Trump supporters are going to say. For similar reasons, no president who has been impeached has ever been removed from office. Now, Biden, he might be impeached, and that's certainly what we're calling for here. We think that Joe Biden, this is an unprecedented abuse of power, trying to imprison your political opponents before an election. He should definitely be impeached. 9 p.m. last night, I'm on the phone with Rick Manning, president of ALG. I said, we should do a statement right now. We need to immediately respond to this. And the only thing to do with a president who's going to lock up his political opponents and turn America into a banana republic is you impeach and remove him. Now, they might lack the votes to convict Biden in the Senate, but that's not what's at stake here. What's at stake is the principle. We're not going to live in a banana republic. This is the constitutional process which we have for an out-of-control executive. It's the impeachment clause. I urge you to go to limitgov.org/impeach-Biden-now/index.html. The link is in the description. It's also in the chat. I really encourage you, please fill out this form and urge your members of Congress to impeach and remove Joe Biden. Enough is enough. We're not going to live in a banana republic. So again, Biden might be impeached for allegedly taking a $5 million bribe from a Ukrainian businessman when he was vice president, or perhaps prosecuting his political rival. I think that should be grounds for impeachment as well. Maybe they want to look at the bribery stuff, but prosecuting your political opponents on the eve of an election, I think that's a pretty impeachable offense. But no one's ever been removed from office. So the framers, they sought to make it very difficult to achieve because they knew that factions would want to take advantage of whatever removal clauses there were. So now that they were aware of how factions would seek to topple one another with the prospect of using the law to take down political opponents. And again, I encourage you all, check out your Federalist Papers. James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, John Jay wrote a few of these, but Federalist number 10 by James Madison talks about the violence of faction and how the Constitution was set up to try to mitigate what was inevitable. You're going to have factions, you're going to have political parties, but how do you mitigate the mischiefs of faction? And it was through the separation of powers, it was through federalism, and many other mechanisms, making it difficult to remove a president from office, things like that. But in this case, the Justice Department and various city district attorneys appear determined to show just how easy it is to actually bring charges against whomever they please, especially prominent political officials, without any consideration at all to the legitimacy of their actions and the consent of the governed. Again, in a rational kind of pre-state, civil society situation, pre-social contract, would you agree to go into a social contract with another faction that's threatening to imprison you if you run for office against them? Or would you come to some sort of pre-arrangement and say, wait a second, we're going to have a constitution, we're going to have due process, we're going to prevent those sorts of things from happening, rather than locking each other up? Maybe we're going to have elections. Yeah, let's do elections. That sounds like a good idea, because we never know which party's going to be in the majority, and we want to have minority rights. And then eventually you get the Bill of Rights, you can have freedom of speech, and then you have the federal government doing all this censorship by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, regulating and restricting social media posts from regular Americans, but mostly conservative Republicans, where they were objecting to COVID policies. They were objecting to the outcome of the 2020 election. Many people thought that there was problems there that needed to be looked at by the Supreme Court, who deferred and said, we're not hearing those cases. And so then you have a lot of people who are really upset. But in any event, we're getting censorship right now. We have police state actions. You have Biden trying to imprison his top political rival for the 2024 election. This is unbelievable. But this is the United States of America right now. And I think the Justice Department and these DAs, they want to show how easy it is, especially to bring charges against prominent political officials without consideration of legitimacy, the consent of the governed. Now, I say these are key underpinnings to the civil society, and it's how we're able to continue functioning. The reasons could be related to policy. I say that, hey, maybe they're trying to influence all these would-be presidents. Maybe they're trying to threaten them. Maybe they're trying to get certain things done. Maybe we're not fully privy to what the leverage is here. But, maybe they need to listen. You better listen to your intelligence, Donald Trump. You're coming into office. There was a whole bunch of news hit pieces where like, will Donald Trump listen to his intelligence briefings? Or is he going to reject the intelligence? Like, yeah, don't reject the gospel of the intelligence agencies, I guess, or they're coming to get you. So I say that, yeah, there is leverage going on here. Clearly, they wanted to have Trump be more aggressive in Ukraine, and they used the Russiagate investigation to pressure Trump to get rid of Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn, you will recall, was removed as national security advisor. He was actually trying to push for a resolution or more peace, or try to de-escalate what he saw as escalating tensions between the United States and Russia. Why? Because he's patriotic, because it's dangerous, because if the U.S. and Russia have very, very poor relations, the prospect of war between the two countries and nuclear war becomes more likely. And that's what Trump ran against. He said he's running against World War III. And boy, is he paying a heavy price for trying to keep us out of Armageddon. So I say, yeah, this is leverage. I think that's what these investigations are all about. Start this war, end that one, and so forth. President Joe Biden had a special counsel appointed to him over his handling of classified documents. And then a few weeks later, he was sending Abrams tanks to Ukraine, or said he was sending them, that he had previously stated he would not send them to Ukraine because of fears of escalating the conflict after Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. He said, oh, that could mean nuclear Armageddon. He's saying it could be World War III if we're going to, start getting involved with sending tanks and other things, but we're sending them now. So we're risking the very things the president of the United States has said could result in World War III. And it happens just a few weeks after a special counsel is appointed against Joe Biden. What a coincidence. You'll do what you're told, Mr. President. That's what I write. But perhaps this is just standard procedure, and it's all about the rule of law. Like, what a coincidence. Every presidential candidate or would-be presidential candidate had Justice Department investigations ultimately brought against them before or after they're in office, or before they even run for office. And they're just going to keep doing this. They're treating everyone who's running for president as some sort of foreign agent, and they're going to, yeah, this is just a standard procedure, though. We're just going through a security check. We got to go through a background check, because the American people can't decide who the president of the United States is going to be, not like this Constitution says. And we're not going to the Electoral College. No, we're going to have the Justice Department do pre-clearances on all of our candidates so they can tell us who can be trusted and which policies they endorse. I think that's what's going on here. So they've all had documents, cases brought against them or threatened to be brought against them. The problem the Justice Department, however, will run into, of course, is that their legitimacy and public support for taking down a candidate or a president is only supported by a faction that opposes that candidate or president. This will create an incentive for the other faction to support doing the same thing, a vicious cycle of political prosecutions that similarly brought down the Roman Republic. And I would just note the fact that Hillary Clinton, her top motivation for foisting Russiagate upon the American people and providing the false Christopher Steele dossier to, through various channels, ultimately to the Justice Department, was because she had an FBI investigation and they figured, oh, it would be much better if Trump had an FBI investigation against him too. So you can see what a vicious cycle this is, how one investigation, how one political prosecution potentially causes other dominoes to fall, more political prosecutions. This indictment was coming down on the same day that news was breaking that Joe Biden might have been accepting a bribe from Ukrainian businessmen. And so, of course, that would be grounds for impeachment. It's right in the Constitution, bribery or high crimes and misdemeanors that would be brought against Biden. And so he leaps into action. The Justice Department leaps in action and says, well, if I'm going to have an impeachment, then Donald Trump should have a prosecution as well. And so for everyone who's saying we need more prosecutions in order to deter prosecutions, I would say that's probably not true. I think that these political prosecutions are begetting political prosecutions. Violence begets violence. And we're spiraling right now. This is how the Roman Republic was brought down a couple millennia ago. And how do you put the genie back in the bottle? We'll go to the chat for that, though. So this is similar, though, to how Rome fell. In fact, all the ways to weaken a constitutional republic, this is one of the most well-documented ways to do it. Maybe they're foolish, or perhaps they're doing this on purpose. And that's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day. But before you go, let's take a look at the chat. I want to see what you guys are saying. You should be pretty fired up in there. And this is just a very sad situation we find ourselves in here. Wow, look at all these chats. We have to scroll all the way to the top here. I'll show you my chat first. Urge House to impeach Joe Biden now. And there's the action alert. You can take action. Please do take action. I think the House needs to take action and impeach and remove Joe Biden from office. I realize the votes are probably not there in the Senate, but they need to send a message that prosecuting political opponents is not tolerated in America. Joe Biden's, he's going to get a taste politically. I think of what Trump would have been dealing with if he had taken actions, or the Trump Justice Department had taken actions against Hillary Clinton in 2017. He never did that. Trump never tried to imprison Hillary Clinton. It didn't happen. Let's see. Patty Parker. Biden is corrupt POS liar, and he should be the real one arrested. And see, everyone wants to arrest their political opponents. What a surprise. Steve Nicholson, I am afraid the time for debate is over, gang. So some people are like, we need to take matters into our own hands. And I would just say don't let yourselves be manipulated. We have a constitution. We have to preserve the civil society. We have to preserve the Constitution. We have a mechanism for removing an out of control executive. It's called impeachment. It's in the Constitution. We have to follow the Constitution. We will not be the party that goes against the Constitution. It's like, oh, just take matters into your own hands. I mean, what is this? The Committee on Public Safety? You think that's how it works? It worked that way in Paris, I guess. The French Revolution. Go read some Rousseau. Go read Karl Marx. They're the ones who propose that people don't act via legislatures, that they just take matters into their own hands. That is not the American tradition. The American tradition was in Congress. You had a Declaration of Independence that was decided upon by the colonies, but they say we're going to be free and independent states. And so they went to their legislatures. They knew they needed a declaration of war. There's a reason why in the Constitution the president can't go to war by himself. It's because No one has the right to drag you or anyone else back to the state of nature, not without a consensus, not without your elected representatives. If you're voting to go to war, it requires a vote of Congress. In the case of the Declaration of Independence, it required a vote of the state legislatures that were being constituted, these states. And to impeach and remove Joe Biden, why that requires a vote of the House. That would be a majority vote in the House of Representatives, and then to convict and remove, which has never ever happened because it's so unprecedented. To actually, find a crime so grave that you would actually remove a president from office. It's never ever happened before. But the framers made it not next to impossible, but practically speaking, you would have to get a bipartisan consensus, assuming there were two political parties. Or just a consensus amongst the various parties that were represented in the Senate. So it takes 2/3 of the Senate. We have 100 senators. It would take 67 senators to remove Joe Biden from office. It's supposed to be difficult. And so, you can impeach Joe Biden. You can have the trial in the Senate. The Democrats will say he's innocent, and the Republicans will say he's guilty. And then, Joe Biden will still be president. And then your only recourse after that would be the 2024 elections, because that's what the Constitution says. Jessica Mark, very sad. I agree. I'm actually heartbroken over this. Sam Abbo, F. Biden and special counsel. Hey, I hear you, man. How you doing, Sam? Tommy Webb, how much do the Democrats pay this guy? The paid whoever is going to trial him. They paid the judge. They paid the jewelry, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, everyone's paid off. Or they could just be partisans. They could have a partisan motivation for trying to take down their political opponents. Maybe it's not necessary for human nature to act upon itself when at the top, Joe Biden, he's the leader of the country and he's the leader of the Democratic Party. He's saying, gloves come off, guys. We're going to go at the Donald Trump and those MAGA Republicans. You remember that speech he gave at Independence Hall? It was portending. It was foreshadowing what was to come. Related to the special counsel investigation. It was just a month or two after or just in a few weeks after the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago. And the American people and, Republicans and Trump supporters, I think rightly, were greatly alarmed by the tenor of the president's rhetoric at Independence Hall. This was a presidential event. This wasn't a campaign spot. He's got the seal of the president right there. And so this was set up, and then he's making this partisan speech about, his political opponent in the election being some sort of extremist or terrorist or whatever. Let's see here. Moving on here. Steve Nicholson. This is a fascist Biden administration that must be removed. And we're going to do it via the impeachment process. Patrick Meechan, Biden-Harris administration for Gitmo. Let's see here. Cindy Sandoz, more than sad, dangerous to America. Jessica, I agree, this is dangerous. Lillian Donna Kuhn, impeach Biden now. Yes, please impeach Biden now. House of Representatives, get to work. Melanie Baker, I contacted my congressman, John James. Melanie Baker, thank you so much. Please, guys, do fill out the form. The link's in the description. You can contact your member of the House, but also your senators, because we expect the House to act on this. I don't see how Republicans would not impeach Joe Biden for doing this, and for the bribery, for that matter. Just as a matter of self-preservation, it's more than what's good for the goose is good for the gander, but we have a constitutional process that is stipulated for just these circumstances. I've been here for 13 years, or really longer than that. Wow, we're in year 15 now, Robert. So I've been here since 2008. And I'll tell you, we've never called for a president to be impeached and removed from office before, ever. Not Bush, not Obama, not Trump, and not Biden until now, because he's prosecuting his political opponents. This is the United States of America. We are not a banana republic. He should be removed from office. That should not be happening in this country. The House of Representatives needs to send a message, and the contact form, it'll also go to your senators, who I think are already starting to speak out against this. They need to get serious, though. Patrick Meechan, again, the Democrats and FBI are more corrupt than the mafia. Barbara Hollis, impeach Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Cindy Sandoz, Smith is a nasty man. Talking about Jack Smith, special counsel. Dan Urea, corrupt fascists. Let's see here. Garland Wells, protect us and this crap. and Biden. To protect us from this crap and Biden. I agree with you. Bob Seaton, BS. Biden is so corrupt and his administration is a farce. Steve Nicholson, DOJ is fascist, guys. I don't know if they're fascist, but this is very authoritarian, and it's like a police state, which is what the fascists use. So the comparison is going to be made. Sam Abbo, F. Biden, special counsel. Gail Willis Jones, arrest Biden. Phyllis Whitehead, impeach Biden. Beth Lafourcade, these laws should have been done away with Hillary. So yeah, there's a a lot of people who are talking about overclassification of documents. And again, these types of cases and investigations and prosecutions now, there was a prosecution brought against David Petraeus. There was one being brought against Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton might have been prosecuted for this. Joe Biden, he's got a special counsel right now for the same exact reason. And, he's not getting any younger. So you get the feeling that maybe they're trying to push Biden out as well and get a different candidate for 2024 for the Democrats. Let's see here. Tommy Webb, there is no justice in the U.S. There ain't nothing but chaos and corruption with the DOJ, Justice Department, the FBI. All that is corrupted, and you wonder why we're like we are, left our country wide open to anybody and everybody because the FBI and Homeland Security, they all got to go to get them out of there. They should be charged. Thank you. Let's see. Mary Ann Murad. That one was blank. Let's see. Only arrests by a patriot DOJ will suffice here. Let's see here. Patrick Meechan. I will never vote for any Democrat, even if I know that person. They are destroying the country and making America disgusting. Let's see. Benny Loden, BS, get Biden administration also. Barbara Hollis, get rid of Biden. He's the devil. Beth Lafourcade, witch hunt. I agree. This is a witch hunt. Michael Lubaszewski. How you doing, Michael? What the Durham report says is that's the real threat to our national security, to not hold that accountable and should exonerate Trump from all this BS. The Durham report was very interesting, and it gives Republicans and Democrats in Congress a roadmap, not for reforming FISA so much as knowing what the problems with the FISA process are. They'll have to piece it together themselves because Durham's, recommendations about how to fix FISA were really kind of pathetic, if you ask me. But I understand he's a federal prosecutor and they love their toys. But you know what? These FISA court rubber stamps, FISA warrant approved, I don't think we need those. And I don't think we need national security investigations against every single person running for president. I don't think that that's suspicious in its own right. I don't think that what they did with Russiagate was correct. I think that all of these political prosecutions are destroying this country. They're destroying the civil society. They're destroying the Constitution. And we are in a death spiral right now. We are circling the abyss. We've entered the whirlpool. And, it's going to take leadership to guide us out of that. Leadership that we sorely need right now, leadership which we are not getting from Joe Biden, and that's why he should be impeached and removed from office for trying to prosecute his political opponents. Beth Lafourcade, stop lying. Roger Axum, BS. Sharon Caballero. Public want these people to leave Trump alone. I agree with that. Francie Purcell, I hate Democrats. They are evil, a lot of them. Let's see. Stephen Nicholson. Yeah, right. You fascist, effing rat, F prick. Okay. A.R. Parmley. Democrats. Sissy April Parsons. Finally, thank you, God, our creator. So some people are supporting arresting Trump. Yeah, let's go arrest our political opponents. Hey, maybe if we arrest more political opponents, we'll stop getting people to arrest their political opponents. It's like, but violence begets violence, guys. So you can succumb to partisanship and just see your political opponents as enemies who should all be imprisoned, or you can see them as neighbors and as fellow Americans. So I speak to my fellow Americans. I speak to my relatives who are Democrats and Republicans alike. I speak to my neighbors. I speak to my countrymen. because we have a country, we have a constitution. And if all you have is factions, then all you have is the state of nature. You don't have the Constitution. And what we're losing right now is the greatest document that, has ever been contrived. The framers were not stupid. They knew what factions were. Check out your James Madison, reread your Federalist Papers, reread Federalist number 10 talks about the violence of faction and how dangerous it is and how it destroys countries. Why would you wish that upon your children and grandchildren by hoping for partisan strife? You should not hope for partisan strife. We need leaders who can guide us through this, that are not going to try to imprison their political opponents. Let's see here. Steve Nicholson, Jack Smith is a fascist. F these people. Sam Abbo, F Biden and special counsel. It's all a witch hunt. Margie Jerome Madewell, thank you for your comment. Impeach Biden along with all of his criminal family. Christopher Coleman, I bet he does. They know their days are numbered, but it won't happen if God be for us. Who can be against us? Oh, and Biden is really already dead according to his. Oh, all right. I think the president's still alive, guys. He's pretty old, though. A.R. Parmley, Democrats, you people are sick. Michael Ozuski, it's not a witch hunt. It's a treasonous act against American citizen, and nothing different than the treasonous act attempted to use our impeachment process to try and overthrow Trump's presidency a few years ago. Using the impeachment process is not treason. Those are separate provisions of the Constitution. The House of Representatives has the power under the Constitution as duly elected representatives to impeach the president. It'll take a majority vote, and that's what we're calling for in the House of Representatives. Impeach Joe Biden. Florence Scarpacci. Impeach Dementia Biden and the cackling hyena. Now you have evidence of them taking $5 million to his crackhead son. They all belong in jail now. Buddy Eskew, BS. Steve Nicholson, F. Jack Smith. Okay. Let's see. David Rentelman. Amazing how these so-called laws don't apply to Democrat politicians. Isn't that interesting? Betty Lou Fulmer. Impeach Biden. Jack Nicholson. Oh, boy. No calls for violence, guys. Do me a favor. David Camilleri. Scripps News 38.6, Trump under Espionage Act. Really? Hey, Joe, you were a Catholic. You go to confession. All right. I don't know if this is a religious matter, although people tend to take their politics as seriously as their religion. So let's see here. Michael Wazuski, the Durham report should be enough evidence to acquit Donald Trump of anything that ever tried to attempt to do by law again. I think, yeah, the Durham report is very important. It builds upon both the Michael Horowitz Inspector General report, but also the Mueller report. There's been a lot of disclosures. When you put the three of those together, there's other disclosures as well. The FISA warrant, for example, came about because of a Freedom of Information Act request by Judicial Watch that the Trump administration cooperated with. And so we've had various pieces of FISA put together that we now know about that makes it more possible for the American people to demand accountability and for either reforms or abolish FISA. If we're just going to be spying on our political opponents so that we can prosecute them and, end the Constitution, then maybe we're better off without it, because how do you preserve and protect the Constitution if the institutions you develop end up destroying it? Irvin Shiflett. It's all about good versus evil, people. John O'Shaughnessy. Wait, my offshore accounts are not full yet. It needs a couple more doses of foreign aid and a bit more Ukrainian funds. Deborah McGuire. Close down the chief trafficker extraordinaire, the big guy China Joe Biden regime. Shackle them all. Dennis Blade. So corrupt is the FBI and DOJ, all controlled by Obama because Sleepy Joe is too busy counting his hard-earned cash with China and Ukraine. Steve Nicholson. Jack Smith is a fascist. POS. F that commie. Sam Abbo. Impeach F. Biden, Hunter, Obama, all lefties. Let's see here. Michael Azizi. Stop calling their treasonous acts against the sitting president a witch hunt. It was a domestic terrorist attack. Impeachments are impeachments. Treason is treason. Terrorism is terrorism. Words have meaning, guys. Let's see here. Jessica Garza, Trump 2024. Sam Abbo, America will never be Marxist. Steve Miller, there is no law saying he can't serve as president from a prison cell. I don't care what they do. I'm still voting for Donald Trump. See, I think that's what's going to happen. You're going to see kind of a groundswell of Republicans supporting Trump under these circumstances. Let's see here. Stephen Ronnie Bryan. Perfectly said, Steve Nicholson. So you got some fans in there, Steve. Debbie Harvey, McLaughlin. We, the American people, are sick of this. This is not Nazi Germany. This is America. I agree with you. William Smith, Trump 2024. Michael Lazuski. Everyone should share this post so we can get more viewers. Thank you, Michael. Mick Cole, they're going to be a civil war. Mark my word. That's the danger, guys. This is that's what happened in the Roman Republic. It led to the Roman Civil War. Once these prosecutions began, they were very difficult to rein in, and ultimately it destroyed the type of governments they had there in Rome. It seeded from a republic with a Senate to, they still had a Senate, but then they had an emperor who served for life. Who would murder his political opponents. What a coincidence. Sharon Caballero, get the real criminal now, which is Biden, way worse than anything Trump did. This is sick. There are all very evil people, boys. Some people just skate like Clinton, Obama, Biden. Seems kind of one-sided. Denise Crum, they can go F themselves, and they need to go out and do Biden in his crib, Hillary, Obama, all of them. They all done dirty dealings and dirty stuff. What are the countries they're destroying? What our country, and giving all our tax dollars to other countries and the unknown effing illegal immigrants that are coming in this country, and they want to go after Trump. Are you kidding me? Trump was nothing but a good president for this country and the American people. How old are you? American Pete Ray. Okay, people are asking for each other's identity. Don't disclose your personal information in the chat, guys. Donna Gallagher, Trump 2024, drain the swamp, lock up Biden's and the entire criminal administration. I think we're only halfway through this. Sherry Turleson, a presidential candidate cannot be prosecuted while running. Incorrect. The president can't be prosecuted because there is a unitary executive, and you have, the executive branch is the president. The president cannot prosecute himself. So that's a constitutional Article 2 principle. But there's nothing that says that a presidential candidate cannot be prosecuted. I'm saying that it's a matter of constitutional survival that it not happen, which is why in the history of this country, it's never happened. Because it's unthinkable for the sitting president to have his Justice Department arresting his political opponents. Sherry Turleson, a presidential candidate. Let's see. Lou Brown, they are all evil. Biden should be charged. President Trump must be protected from the evilness around him. Biden must be charged too. This is a travesty against Trump. I am so heartbroken. I am heartbroken too, for America, for the American people, for the Constitution. And I fear what this leads to, guys. Let's see. Sam Abbo, vote President Trump and save America. Denise Crum, they all took on legal documents, but Biden was the worst because he has done it when he was in the Senate. He wasn't even president, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, but I think there's something to this overclassification stuff. I think that, Trump was declassifying these documents. There was a memorandum I mentioned. Let's share the screen again, actually, because I wanted to show you that. It was pertinent to the to the investigation. Let's see, we still got this up. Good. Here is the memorandum from former President Donald Trump, memorandum on declassification of certain materials related to the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. This was on January 19, 2021. Memorandum for the Attorney General, the Director of National Intelligence, the Director of the CIA, declassification of certain materials related to the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane. He said, at my request on December 30, 2020, Department of Justice provided the White House with a binder of materials related to the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Portions of the documents in the binder have remained classified and have not been released to the Congress or the public. I requested the documents so that a declassification review could be performed and so I could determine to what extent materials in the binder should be released in unclassified form. I determined that the materials in that binder should be declassified to the maximum extent possible. In response, and as a part of the iterative process of the declassification review, under a cover letter dated January 17, 2021, the Federal Bureau of Investigation noted in its continuing objection to any further declassification. And then he determined to accept their redactions. There was some negotiation there, like, oh, but you have to redact this. And he said, fine, just give me these documents. Let's get them to Congress and the American people. I hereby declassify the remaining materials in the binder. This is my final determination under the declassification review. Turns out it wasn't final. He was going to go further, but I'll get to that. I have directed the Attorney General to implement the redactions in the FBI's January 17 submission and return to the White House an appropriately redacted copy, but that never ended up happening. According to Kash Patel, documents at Mar-a-Lago marked classified were already declassified, Kash Patel says. And so this was actually a part of the interview. There's this raid going on. There's this dispute over the archives. And Kash Patel says, I was there when Trump said that we're declassifying this. He stated, quote, the White House counsel failed to generate the paperwork to change the classification markings, but that doesn't mean that the information wasn't declassified. I was there when President Trump, when he said, we are declassifying this information. And he also said that Kash Patel, I actually have another quote from him here. He thought the American people should have the right to read it themselves. This information related to Crossfire Hurricane. Now, we don't know how much of it was brought out by John Durham when he did his report. There could be parts of what Trump was declassifying that found their way into the Durham report. We really don't know. So the question I have is, what are they hiding? What is Biden hiding? Why didn't he want these declassified documents out there? Did he reclassify them? I think that's a really good question. And so we might find out soon, but ultimately it will be for the American people to decide if all this is worth overturning the nation's two-party system to prop up a failing president who appears to dread a head-to-head matchup with his former rival and instead seeks to imprison him. This is dangerous, but politically, as the polls indicate, it could be benefiting Trump in unanticipated ways, predictable to see outside the Beltway, but less so for an entrenched political establishment and permanent state too blinded by their own power and their desperation to keep it. I'll leave it there, guys. I think we've been going for quite a while here. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.